Today's Bible verse is pretty short, folks. 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 7. For we live by faith, not by sight. That's the word of God for the people of God. And honestly, that's freaking terrible. I'm honestly wondering if that is the worst advice the Bible has. When you determine what is true, you follow the evidence wherever it leads. Evidence is what will improve your decision-making skills, your problem-solving skills, your health, your well-being. It'll reduce bias and prejudice and will help you lead a more moral life. There's a quote from Voltaire that a lot of us here really like that goes, anyone who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities. So if you think this Bible verse is wise to live by, then give us a call because the show is starting right now. Woo! Welcome, folks. Today is September 10th, 2023, and tomorrow will be 22 years since the 9/11 attacks on the USA. So we wanted to take a moment to recognize this and talk about how these horrifying acts resulted in the tragic loss of thousands of innocent lives, inflicting immeasurable pain and suffering upon numerous families and communities. Beliefs matter. Beliefs matter. So our thoughts are with the friends and families of those victims, and we're all just sending you a bunch of love today. So with that, I'm your host, Secular Rarity, and joining me today is the man on the water who has no holy father. It's Jim Barrows. What's up,
Hello,
brother?
hello. Not too bad. How you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm always glad to be on with you. We actually got to host AXP live together at the Free Thought Library a few months ago. And
Yeah,
so that was super
awesome.
awesome.
Oh yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
and we just did the Bat Cruise as well. For those of you who were there,
Right.
thank you so much. That was an absolute blast to see everybody.
Yeah, it is a truly, truly great time to be down there.
And there were bats this time.
Yeah,
there were
really.
actual bats.
Oh my gosh, it is so amazing, truly, to just see them all come out at the same time. It's like they're going around talking to each other, but in reality, of course, they're all just kind of like deciding, like, all right, I guess it's time for our little section to bounce. But that's why if you go around Austin, you're not going to find a lot of mosquitoes like you will here in Nashville. It's really cool. So maybe all cities need to just start having large bat colonies. I don't know.
That would help, probably. Yeah, keep the bugs down. So
yeah. But that's not what we're here to talk about today, folks. We're here to talk about God and faith and religion and why those things, really aren't super great. But first, let me remind you that the Atheist Experience is a product of the Atheist Community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. All very good things, all things we love to talk about, and all things that, honestly, if for whatever reason you don't like those things, why not call us? Because we've got some open lines. It's pretty easy. You can see the phone number below, 512-991-9242, or you can just hit us up on the computer, tiny.cc/call-AXP. We make it easy for you because we do want to talk to you. And we also want to hear your experiences, which is why before we grab some of these awesome calls I already see lining up, we are going to talk about last week's results of the Share Your Experience question. So last week, we asked you to complete the sentence. It was a real jerk move when Allah blank. So here are the top 3 answers from y'all. Chuck Gato says, it was a real jerk move when Allah forgot to send Muhammad to North America like God did with Jesus. Like, yeah, what's up with that? Like, you just hit one small section of the world as the all-powerful, all-knowing creator who wants to send a message. It just seems like a really poor way to get the message out,
Yeah, you can't get it out to South America or North America. And why not South America or North America for that matter? I mean, why the Middle East? That doesn't seem to make any sense.
Why not start in Australia? Honestly, it seems reasonable to me. It's if you go around, the Arctic and so forth, I think the trip is shorter. I don't know. Maybe there's somebody out there who's better at geography.
Yeah, because there were perfectly good civilizations around at the time in other parts of the world. And so, why the Middle East? So yeah,
it's weird.
Yeah. Although if you're trying to spread rumors, it makes sense because the Middle East is a major trade route. So if you're just trying to spread stories or have stories spread, Now that makes a heck of a lot of sense.
That's interesting. That's an interesting thought there, Jim. Number 2, we've got from Josh Sheridan, Allah's biggest mistake, choosing an illiterate warmonger with an unhealthy obsession with children as its spokesman. Yeah, I gotta agree with you, Josh. That's really bad, especially when Allah decided to couple that, guy who was illiterate and a warmonger and had an unhealthy obsession with children, when Allah was like, hey, by the way, everything this dude does is the way you should live your life. That's really bad. I really should have thought about that one before putting those two together. Yeah, maybe Allah's not so forethought.
That's probably not the biggest indication that God doesn't have an idea what he's doing. But
yeah.
Definitely one.
That or the book of Job, right? Number
there's
1.
There's a dick move.
Number 1 from Waltham 1892. It was a real jerk move when Allah cut his sleeve off to let the cat continue sleeping. Now they expect it all the time. Yeah. I gotta say, you give a cat an inch and they'll take your whole sleeve. Everybody knows that expression.
Yeah.
So, but we have another prompt for you, folks. And as always, we want to see those comments. So get them underneath the video in the comments section. If they're in the live chat, we won't count them. So get them there, because here's what we're asking of you. And Jim, I'm going to throw it to you first. Okay.
Okay.
What should the Norse have had a god of, but didn't?
Hiccups.
Like you could pray to this god to give people hiccups, or to take away your hiccups.
Take them away. Yeah. I mean, there are people in the world who have had hiccups for years and are chronically afflicted with them. And you need a god to do that. He'd be a small god.
Right. Not as powerful as some of the big name ones we all know, right?
Yeah.
Just kind of a minor.
Or just a god of minor inconveniences.
I honestly believe this, y'all. If there is a deity out there whose power is to give people hiccups, I just think that is the most evil character that's ever been invented. That is just absolute torture to force that onto people. So let's be proud that the Norse did not have a god of hiccups.
Yeah, well, I was thinking more taking them away or instead of giving them, but yeah, I mean,
taking them is good. That's a good god. That's a good god. Yeah, but if a god can take away hiccups, couldn't a god give you hiccups? I mean, I don't exactly know how the god magic works.
Yeah, I suppose, but they're annoying. Everybody hates them. And there's something that happens because we are so well designed. That a small hiccup in our nervous system causes them. So,
it's I think you said it the best. Just another great example of that, all powerful, all knowing, all loving design from a very, very existent deity, right? Or wait, no. But folks, like I said, we want your answers in the comments section. So what should the Norse have had a god of but didn't? And then make sure to check in at the beginning of next week's episode so that you can hear our top 3. And if you put something super great, you might be one of those 3. So let's see what we've got. We've got some good calls already, folks, but we have more open lines. So get your calls in. I think the chat poll question today is something about how nothing good exclusively comes from faith. What do you think on that, Jim? Do you think there's anything positive or beneficial that faith brings to us either individually or societally that we can't get anywhere else?
Well, I think the real question you have to ask, that you're asking, is can you be right for the wrong reasons? Because you could have faith in something and have that thing be true.
Sure.
But if your reasons aren't correct, then are you in fact correct? Even though, a watch is correct twice a day is the old adage. And the question is it really right twice a day if it's broken? And I think the answer to that is no. Just because you're lucky enough to have faith in something that's true doesn't mean that luck is going to hold out for everything. So no, it doesn't make any sense to me that you can be right for the wrong reasons. You have to be right for the correct reasons, and you have to have reasons to support that position. Otherwise, you're just a broken clock who's occasionally right.
Yeah.
And that's no way to live.
Yeah, and it's definitely not reliable, right? And that's kind of the whole point about like learning about things and skepticism and critical thinking and so forth. It's like, well, you want something that's going to be reliably giving you the most correct answer you can. And if faith is one of those things where you can just kind of close your freaking eyes and spin around the room and point something, it's like, did you really pin the tail on that donkey, man? Like, did you really intend, or congrats, you got one right.
Well, the reason why you get a prize for pinning the tail on a donkey, because it's a matter of luck too, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Nobody's expecting you to get to the right conclusion here. And it's like, oh my gosh, he actually did it. Wow, that's incredible.
Good job. Yeah.
Speaking of which, if anybody out there is wanting to organize pin the tail on the donkey parties, just hit us up. We got lots of ways for you to contact us. But before we go completely off the rails and the crew is very disappointed with our job today, we're going to grab a call. We're going to go down to Florida and talk with Andrew, him, who's a theist, who wants to talk with us about some of the a new study, it sounds like, that has to do with atheism. Hey, Andrew, you're talking with Secular Rarity and Jim Barrows. What you got for us?
Hello, gentlemen. My original point was that atheism leads to higher divorce rates than theism.
Okay. Why is that bad?
General point.
Okay. Why is that bad in your eyes? I think that's a great place to start.
It's bad because it hurts children. It splits families apart and it hurts children psychologically. How
does divorce inherently hurt children? It seems to me that the simple fact of the parents of a child having a marriage certificate is not the most important thing for the health and well-being of that child. It would seem to me that the way that the parents supported and engaged with their child and each other around the child would actually be more what matters.
Yes.
What do you think?
Yes, but it's not just a certificate. The way you're defining marriage right now, you're saying it's just a piece of paper. That kind of proves my point.
So what I'm saying is that the difference between a marriage and a divorce is a legal process, right? At the end of the day, you can have all of the things that you would agree are a good marriage without having that piece of paper, which would mean that you would never have the divorce, right? But the divorce is just literally a legal process that tells the government, I'm no longer connected with this person. If what you're describing marriage as is a set of criteria in which two consensual adults engage in particular ways with each other that is positive and beneficial for each other and any offspring from that, then that has nothing to do with divorce. It just doesn't, because all of that can happen without ever going through the process of getting married, which means that divorce just doesn't.
And what is the name of the study? Where is that study? Where can we find it?
Very good question, Jim. Very good question. I know we threw a lot at you, Andrew, but we're gonna answer Jim first, and then anything I said that you want to shout back on, we'd love to hear.
Okay. National Survey of Sexual Attitudes and Lifestyles. It was published from the Journal of Sex Research. It's called Religiosity, Sex Frequency, and Sexual Satisfaction in Britain.
That's weird that divorce comes up in that. But
yeah, so it's slow that down, because I want to pull it up. Because are you saying that this proves that atheism causes divorce, or is that atheism is linked to divorce? Those are two very different claims that the paper could be making.
I don't know. I didn't hear the second part. The second part.
Is the article claiming that atheism is causal or correlated to divorce?
Neither. The article is saying that Christians have more satisfying sex lives because of their marriages and their views of marriage than non-Christians.
So where is the connection to divorce rates being higher?
Where's the divorce rates is higher?
Like I'm not saying any of these things that you're saying are necessarily false or true or anything. Right now, I'm just trying to get to the basic understanding of just following the dots here, man. It sounded like you kind of went, here's conclusion number 5, 1 to 17, maybe, and then we get to 5. It's just get the through line for us a little bit more clear, please.
Yes, I was getting to that. The secular rarity was just trying to define divorce as just a legal process when I'm strictly talking about the separation aspect of it that harms children. And so, but
you need to tie sexual satisfaction to divorce now, because that's what you started with. The paper you just cited is about sexual satisfaction, not divorce. And the reason I'm asking this is because I'm looking at a study conducted in 2014 by the Pew Research Center that shows that the divorce rate among atheists in the United States is 2%, and among born-again Christians it's 23%, Catholics at 19%, Protestants at 51%, Mormons at 9%, Buddhism is at 10%. So when we're talking about divorce rates, I've got a study here that completely contradicts your claim in the United States. Now, you're talking about England. That's fine. They're two different countries. And so that tells me that atheism has nothing to do with what you're talking about in terms of divorce rates. So can we stick to the topic of divorce rates?
Sure. The view that most atheists have on divorce, rather on marriage itself, is that it's not a duty. It's just a relationship between two partners. Children can come or not. So my point is,
that's exactly. You're right. What's your point? Yeah. You're right. What's your point?
What's wrong with that view? I don't even know that most atheists, most people who would say that they're atheists would accept that view. But like, what is the problem with that view in your eyes?
That it leads to more divorce because you overlook the damage that it does to children. You don't.
Yeah, but do you see how the problem that hang on a second, Andrew. I just muted you for just a second because I really want to point this out. Like it almost sounds like what you're saying is like it's this point that doesn't actually have a point. It's a point that doesn't actually go anywhere, right? Because you're like, well, a lot of atheists think that like marriage isn't some prescribed duty from some like deity, and it's like, okay, like yeah, maybe that's true. Like, what's the problem? And then your response is, well, then like people are getting divorced. And it's like, yeah, but again, like in the viewpoint that you laid out, the people that you're trying to criticize for doing the thing that you think is a problem, they just don't see it that way, man. Like if somebody agrees with the way that you laid out the definition of marriage, then like when you go to, oh, but if you see marriage like that, you're going to be divorced. They don't care. It doesn't matter because they don't see marriage as this like, sacrosanct thing that we have to all do like you do. If that's how you feel about marriage, though, man, just tell us why that's true. Just tell us how you got to that conclusion and why it should matter for us. Right. Because currently you're basically saying like, hey, Jim, hey, SR, you told me you don't like fried chicken. And we're like, yeah, that's the case. And then you're like, well, if you don't like fried chicken, you won't eat fried chicken. And it's like, well, good. I'm perfectly comfortable with that, man. Like we haven't moved the needle at all.
And not only that, but I've got an article here from the Scientific American written in 2013 titled, "Is Divorce Bad for Children?" I'll cut right to the chase. Yet parents who split have reason for hope. Researchers have found that only a small percentage of children experience serious problems in the wake of divorce or later as adults. In this column, we discuss these findings as well as factors that may protect children from potentially harmful effects of divorce. So not only is it a small percentage of children that have a problem with divorce, we have ways to mitigate that. So parents who care about their children, I'm going to assume all parents do, or most parents do, have ways to mitigate those issues. And so it's a small problem. A much bigger problem is, why in the world should you be unhappy? And wouldn't unhappiness also have a negative effect on children? Mm-hmm. So if you're going to cite children as a problem, one, make sure it's a major problem. It's not. Two, make sure that we don't have any ways to mitigate those issues for children whose parents are going through divorce. And three, you got to show us, so what? People being miserable is not good either. And being miserable for your children isn't a good example.
Right.
So
now, Andrew, I know we have shouted a lot at you. I still have you on mute. I'm going to unmute you in just a second, but I'm going to give our crew just a second to get our 60-second counter, because we're going to give you a full uninterrupted minute, whatever, you want to respond to after what we just said to you. Okay. We want to give you some fair time on this, but yeah, Jim and I are coming from a totally different place on this than you. So help us see that clear through line. Okay. So I'm unmuting you right now. We're going to give you a minute. Go for it, Andrew. Tell us your thoughts.
The way that secularists view sex and marriage and relationships and families is different than the way that religious people view sex, marriage, love, relationships, and family. And I'm saying that the way that religious people view it is healthier for society. Even this study that I cited states that religious people are more satisfied with their sex lives in their marriages, and they have more satisfying relationships and marriages because of the religious attitudes towards sex and marriage. And it's better for children when the parents stay together happily, not unhappily, not abuse, but it's better for the children that both mom and dad live together with them in the home. And my last point is that the more sexual partners you have before getting married reduces your ability to pair bond, and it hurts the marriage. Marriages, people that come into marriages with less sexual partners, they're more able to enjoy the marriage because they haven't had a bunch of sex with a bunch of other people. Atheists or seculars, tend to have more sex with more people before marriage.
That's a full minute. And I got to say a couple of things here, man. Again, one, like you started off, I thought really good, where you were like, hey, it tends to be the case that people that aren't religious, people that are secular, atheists, agnostic, non-believers, that stripe of person out there, they don't tend to see, sex and marriage the same way that religious people do. I completely agree with you. Just 100% on that. That seems clear to me too. Again, where I find the problem is that you just started listing all of these things afterwards, but like you never really gave us anything. You said like divorce hurts children, but again, my question is how, where, what is the actual tangible harm? And I think if you and I hashed it out for the next 20 minutes, which, we probably don't have the time to do, but if we really did, what we'd come to find is that the things that are affecting the child's development and well-being overall, the things that are negatively influencing that is going to be related to, like, just to put it simply, shitty actions, right? Or not giving a damn about the child in a supportive way, So like, for instance, let's say two people get divorced and they constantly tell the child the other parent is a horrible, horrible, terrible person. Hate them, hate them, hate them. Yeah, that's a bad thing. But you know what's crazy is that you don't have to have divorce to have that, man. Like, that happens just the same in marriage. And so ultimately, at the end of the day, the thing that seems to tip the scale either way isn't about being married or divorced. It's about a set of criteria. It's about a set of actions that the guardians either do or do not take when it comes to raising this child. And so again, I don't see how somebody maintaining a marriage, especially as Jim has pointed out, there are lots of very unhappy people in marriages who do not get a divorce specifically because their religion says not to. How is that a better environment for the child than one where the child now has, let's say, two separate households that is entirely loving and supportive? I just don't see where the marriage and divorce thing comes into it. And then you've also brought up, and then I'll shut up and kick it over to you and Jim, but you also brought up like happiness in terms of like sex in a marriage. And I don't have any data for this, but I feel pretty confident that like we didn't fuck super well isn't the number one reason that people get divorced. I would imagine it's lower on the list.
It's money. That's number one's money.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, you reiterated your point, which we already dealt with. You said again, it's kids, implying all kids, I'm assuming. I came up with data that showed that it's not all kids. In fact, it's a minor number of them that have long-lasting effects. Not only is it a small number of them that do, we also have ways to mitigate that and make sure that that doesn't happen. So we could effectively say it is not all kids, given parents who care and are willing to take those steps. So your points are refuted on that. Your study, I don't believe, is causal, and you're claiming causal. You're saying that atheism causes bad sex. Well, no, I think that's a correlation study, in which case, okay, you got a lot of work to do causal. And if that study is only relying on people to correctly report their actions, then that study is not a super good study to base anything off of. It's a really good study to go find more research to do and to get into more areas and do more research like that. But to base something along the lines of atheism is bad because it causes bad sex, that's just ridiculous. As for atheism and divorce, which is what you were calling about, again, my Pew Center research trumps yours, because you haven't provided any evidence for your claims that atheism is bad for marriage, especially when I'm looking at this Pew research done in 2014 that says 2% of atheists end up in divorce in the United States, whereas 51% of Protestants, 19% of Catholics, and 33% of born-again Christians end up in divorce. So none of your points are standing right now because you haven't brought any evidence to support them.
What's your response? What you got, Andrew? Andrew, you still there? Okay, cool.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
You dismissed my study without even really looking at it, and I can just do the same for your studies. So
no, I looked at your study. Your study is correlational. It's not causal.
Yeah, Jim actually pulled it up.
Yeah, you're claiming causal. Atheism causes bad sex.
Right.
That's not the case. It's correlated. Correlation is not causation. So you can't say it's cause. You can only say it's correlated. You're making a much stronger case than exists.
And then again, also, Andrew, like, I still haven't heard anything in this study that you're talking about that has to do with divorce. I've heard atheists don't fuck well, which, hey, maybe that's the case, man. But I can honestly tell you, in the last decade of my life, as I've gotten away from religion, I've definitely had much better sexual encounters. Now, that's a personal experience, and we often say personal experiences aren't the proof there for the truth of it universally. But again, I'm lost because I don't see the connection that you're trying to make. And I think you're trying to make certain connections that have been just kind of mundane, everyday in the water talking points that people have said for literally millennia. It's surprising. But if you go back 700 years in human history, hell, if you go back 7,000 years in human history, there seems to be some people going around saying things like family, it's a good thing, and that on its face isn't a problem, right? That isn't the issue. Myself and Jim aren't going to be standing up for just people just constantly not having close connections with, people that they care about. That's what a family is just people who choose to come together and give a shit about each other, right? And if you have that, whether or not you're married doesn't matter. Whether or not you're in a cis heterosexual relationship doesn't matter. You can have one parent or 5 parents. None of that matters, because at the end of the day, the thing that is the most important is the love and support that you show for each other, right? Especially for a child, especially for someone who's not able to fully take care of themselves and navigate this world. So it's confusing to me why specifically being in this prescribed union and nothing else is somehow, I don't know, honestly, just magical. I just don't know. I truly don't. I don't see the connection there. And I'd love I'd love it if you could just one more time for us, just help us understand that. Okay. We've already been on the call for almost 20 minutes and we got a bunch of other really good calls too, you know? So we're gonna, you know, let you go in just a minute, but yeah, if you could, man, one more time for us, Andrew, what is that connection? What is it specifically about being married, you know, not getting a divorce that really, really just tips it over the top of that mountain and makes people that much better? What is it?
It is a safeguard, an extra layer of protection to keep the family together, and more of an incentive for parents to stay together and not break up, not have a breakup mentality. If you don't divorce just because the relationship isn't going well, overall, it's better for the child, for mom and dad who biologically birthed them, to stay together happily.
Is it ever acceptable to have a divorce? You said you don't just get a divorce because the relationship isn't going well, which again, don't have the data in front of me, but would feel very confident in expressing that that's probably not in the top few, right? But is there a point at all where the relationship is going bad, where it is acceptable in your eyes, or should just people never, ever, ever get a divorce?
Abuse.
Okay. Well, that's cool. I'm super glad you said that, man. Cause like, yeah, glad you said that. So
yeah, at least that.
Yeah.
But again, if two people are unhappy, then what they're doing is mirroring for their children that it's okay to be unhappy.
Yes.
Do you think that's healthy?
No, it's not healthy. I prefer that they do.
Okay, so would you agree that divorce, when two people are unhappy with being each other, divorce in that case is a good thing, so that they're not teaching children that being unhappy is a good thing?
Most of the time, no. Sometimes, yes. Maybe.
Wow.
Do you kind of see what Jim and I here are getting at, man? Is because like it kind of seems like every single time we poke a little at these statements that you've brought us, like it very quickly steps away from the strictly married, divorced, you know, problem, and it starts getting into all of these other things that Jim was talking about, all these other mitigating factors that are like completely obvious to so many people. Child psychologists have been studying for decades and decades. Like we have lots and lots of data. And so ultimately it's just like, it kind of seems like you're defeating your own point here, Andrew, because you keep coming back to these things that, again, myself and Jim, you know, totally agree with. You're like, no, if people are abusing each other in relationships, yeah, they should get a divorce. And it's like, well, yeah, but then doesn't that go against your thing? Because you're the one that's saying there's something inherent to marriage and divorce itself. But it sounds like in reality, you do kind of the same game that we do, which is you look at a situation and you look at the overall benefit or harm that's happening. You look at well-being of everybody involved in this relationship, just like we do. And if that's the game you're playing, awesome, man. Jump on in. The water's fine. We've all been playing it for years on this side, and we want you to join us because I truly do believe that's the correct way, as opposed to just saying, honestly, a piece of paper is what causes people to be better or worse. But Andrew, I know we've had you on for a bit. I know we've shouted a bunch of things at you, man. But we are going to let you go today, get to some of these other great calls. I thought this was a fantastic call, Andrew. And I really, really hope you call us back in the future. You know, we were able to challenge each other, but I think we were all pretty damn respectful. So thanks so much for that, Andrew. Seriously, it means a lot to us. But yeah, Jim, I think you and I come to the same, you know, page here, man. It just, there isn't something inherent about marriage that makes anything better.
Well, let's pull it back to the 10,000 foot view, right? One of the things religion gives people are these ironclad rules and this recipe. Ooh. And let's assume, let's just use a metaphor. It's a recipe for angel food cake. Problem is, I don't like angel food cake.
Ooh.
So that recipe is not going to work for me because we all have different tastes. We all have different things that we want out of life. We all have different things that we value. And so a one size fits all rarely ever works. A one recipe for every single cake ain't going to work. Because some of us don't even like cake. And some of us do. Now, if you don't like cake, I got other questions for you. Speaking as a fat man for a reason. But, you know, it is what it is. But we all have different ones. We all have different needs. Life is rarely this cut and dried thing.
Exactly.
And you always have to take these situations and look at them. And even our own laws reflect that, right? That's why we have cases, and we just don't blindly slam things together. We look at each individual case and go, is there enough evidence to support the charge or not? And those are the things that we look at. So to come up and say this is the way it must be for everybody is to deny the individuality of everybody. That is to deny everybody's free will. It's all these bad things when you have this one size fits all, everybody wants angel food cake mentality. Totally. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, completely.
All right, anyway.
Agree. And I think as society as a whole has expanded our definition of what a family is, we have seen a reduction in the harm that gets perpetuated. I honestly believe that, because decades and decades ago, if two men wanted to raise a child and live together, oh boy, you know, in the United States, you'd be put in jail, you'd be killed. There are still places in the world today that is the case. So yeah, it as we have continued to expand and become accepting of the absolute million freaking different ways to have a successful family, we have just continued to watch harm just reduce. And I think that's amazing. I think that's a phenomenal thing. And I don't want to take that away from anybody.
Nope. So, yeah.
With that, though, folks, I'm going to tell you a couple of things. Like, for instance, I'm going to read this $1.99 super chat from Thomas Gallipoli, a wonderful supporter who I think the last few times I've been on, Thomas, you've been up here throwing some love and support. So Thomas is saying that wife and I celebrated 22 wedding anniversary on Friday. 22 freaking years, Thomas. That is amazing. Yeah, that bucks that atheist getting divorced trend thing. So good for you, Thomas. And I don't know if I'm allowed to tell you to have good atheist sex, so I'm not going to explicitly do that. But again, yeah, I thought that was so silly. Like, atheists don't have good sex. Like, come on, we're the ones really doing it.
Sex is a skill. So how do you develop a skill?
When you don't do it right.
And if the only thing you've ever tasted is vanilla ice cream, vanilla ice cream is pretty good.
We're getting into some places here where all I'll be able to say is innuendo. So instead of that, I'll read the next set of announcements, which is, if you like what we do and you would like to support us here at the Atheist Community of Austin and the Atheist Experience, there are a bunch of ways. In fact, there's a really cool, new, exciting way to support the ACA. You can buy a brick and become part of the library's legacy. So check out this video.
Have you ever wanted to make a permanent impact on the atheist community of Austin? Help support our space for free thought by buying a custom engraved brick to be laid on the building grounds to help raise funds for improvements. Our building has stood as a beacon for years, bringing people together. But 3 years of emptiness due to the pandemic have taken a toll, leaving it in disrepair. Help us restore this hub of connection and support by buying a brick. Moses had his stone tablets, but we're doing our own version. Join our brick fundraiser and let your engraved messages stand the test of time, minus commandments. Visit tiny.cc/ACA bricks for more information.
All right, folks. And that is an awesome freaking way that you can support this wonderful, wonderful organization. And you get a little something for yourself, you know, because then you can just go hang out at the end of the month for those live in-person shows. And then you can go see your brick and take your picture with it, all that good stuff. We also have some other really cool ways. Like, for instance, you can become a channel member for just as little as 99 cents a month. You just click the join button below the video, and this will give you access to those super duper special chat emojis. I think both my face and Jim's face is down there. So just spam the crap out of it right now. Just let everybody know who's not a member what they are missing out on. Honestly, throw in some Kenneth Leonard's. Like, you know, he's awesome too. Like, you know, don't leave him out. You can also send a super chat with a question or comment, which the hosts will be obligated to read live during the show, as long as they are YouTube appropriate, of course. But yeah, if you want to hear me and Jim say some kind of silly things, we'll do it. We'll do it. We are whores, and we will take that money. So anyway. We've already gone off the rails, man. We're not even that far in, man. I don't know how
it's been a rocky road so far.
It's been a rocky road so far. Oh my gosh, I love it. I love it, folks. Well, we are going to go all the way out to the country of Georgia. We are going to talk with Otari. Him is a theist and wants to talk about a single parent household. So yeah, we're going to keep this rolling. How are you today, Otari? You are on the Atheist Experience.
I'm fine. And you?
Yeah, pretty good, pretty good. We were chatting with SR and Jim. What you got for us?
Did I hear correctly? Did you just deny that single-parent households are not worse for children?
No, I didn't.
Do you have any evidence to support your claim? I'll look at the evidence.
Yeah, I can get real nuanced with this if you want, which is just what Jim said. I think that's always a good place to start for any claims like that. I've heard people say a lot, single parent households are worse for children, but I've never really seen a bunch of robust evidence for that. That being said, on the face of it, if we want to just, again, take that real broad viewpoint, it doesn't sound particularly silly to me to think that one individual bringing in money and being able to provide support for a child versus two individuals, 3, 4, 12. Yeah, it kind of makes sense that if we got like an extra 5 people all having jobs, all being able to throw hands in, like we probably can make some beneficial progress there, right? Like that doesn't seem particularly strange to me. So, but again, yeah, I mean, what studies do we have that indicate that single parent households are just somehow radically problematic and just like, I don't know, tormenting children?
Not these studies per se, but I have Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, and it says that children in single parent families are more likely to live in poverty.
Sure. Okay. That's fair. I'll just take it at its face. Would you, if you had to put money on it, if you had all your life savings in cash in front of you, and instead of making it rain, you were going to pick a side, would you think that the reason that children growing up in single parent households are more likely to be, delinquents, do you think that might have something to do with just the lack of extra support and financial stability that another person could bring? Or do you think there's something inherent to like both the parents just constantly being in the same house? Do you see what I'm kind of getting at here?
Yeah. Besides the poverty, of course, there's the juvenile prisons full of children who have no fathers.
Sure.
Especially.
Yeah, there are lots of people in juvenile prisons who have both parents and grew up with them too. So.
All right. And is it the fact that it's single parent, or is it typically
father?
Well, or is the problem that typically single parent households, whether it's a mother or a father, tend to be lower income households and to not have as much disposable income, in part because childcare in the United States is so expensive.
Yeah.
Because if you look at what it takes to be a good parent, it all boils down to, do you have disposable income to be able to do things with your child, to be able to provide more than a meal for your child, to be able to be there for your child when they need to be there? Or are you working 2, 3, 4 jobs just to pay the rent and put food on the table and pay the utility bills, right? Because these are all things that happen in single family homes, and this is all leads to poverty. So which do you think it is? Because we see single parent homes that in high income that don't have this, that don't have many of the same issues, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think the real problem is?
The fact that they divorced. If they didn't divorce, then they would not be more likely to be poor.
That doesn't address a single thing that I said about poverty, right? Because you could have two parents in the household and still have the kids be in poverty and have both parents working 2 jobs apiece.
Single parents.
Yeah, sure.
Right.
Again, like Otari, this isn't radical here. Like the stuff that you're bringing to us is like, hey, if you don't have blue socks in your drawer, the likelihood of you picking blue socks is like real low, bro. And it's like, yeah, nobody's confused about that or arguing in any different way. Where the issue is, right, is that it sounds like what you're arguing for is that there is something that is specific to like being married or like both the parents being there, right, to raise a child. There's something specific about that situation that like tips the scales to your side. And what Jim and I are saying is just essentially like, hey, we think the actual reasons that the scale seems to tip is for all of these other factors that we've laid out. One of the obviously largest, in my opinion, is exactly what Jim just said: financial stability of the guardians and caregivers of the child. And so if that's the case, it doesn't matter if like the 2 people who like did the naughty and like mixed up their biology gunk, it doesn't matter if those 2 people are the ones that are there. All that matters is a simple numbers game of 1 income versus 2 incomes, right? But again, that could be mitigated by the single income being extremely large or the 2 incomes being extremely small. Like, so there's nothing that seemingly ties directly back to both the parents being there raising the child or the marriage thing, like the last one. So help us understand this connection, okay? Help us understand what it is specifically about having 2 parents raising a child that none of these other things that we have said so far could like overcome that hurdle. What is it specifically?
So you are saying that marriage has the kids.
Yeah. So here's
I mean,
here's a study for you. Here's a study for you. It's called Single Mother Parenting and Adolescent Psychopathology. And in this study, they start off with the exact hypotheses that you're claiming. And here's the results that they found. When they adjusted for socioeconomic status and race, they found that at baseline, adolescents did not differ on depressive symptoms, depressive orders, anxiety symptoms, or anxiety disorders by single motherhood status. So, yeah, this is exactly the problem that we're running into. It's not the single parent status. It is the socioeconomic and race status of the parents, which we're going to find even in 2-parent households. So what is the real problem here? Is it divorce and single parent, or is it socioeconomic status?
All right. Even if you want to not ascribe the cause to the marriage, the fact is that when they are single, effects of it is bad, according to statistics. And
right, and is the source that you're quoting, is that adjusting for socioeconomic status of the parent as well as their race?
Right.
Because if it's not doing those 2 things, then the most likely cause of what you're saying is actually not single parent, but socioeconomic status.
Right. basically where Jim and I are at in this conversation, Otari, is we're saying, okay, let's just take the bullet point you gave us. We'd like to move on to number 2 or 3 now, which would help truly clarify the situation in its entirety. So did those studies take into account the socioeconomic status or race or you know, legal battles that individuals might have to face due to ethnicity or history and stuff? Did those studies take that into account, like Jim asked? And if not, do you feel like maybe if you took those things into account, it would change what the conclusions were?
No, even if you took the account of all those studies and deny the causal effect of marriage, fact is that not everyone can be rich, right? And of all this majority of people who get divorced have effects such as I already mentioned.
Yeah, but just to be clear, you wouldn't advocate that simply because of the way, like, in general economics works around the world, that kind of leads to the fact that not everybody can be a super rich billionaire, okay? You wouldn't then say that because that's most likely the case for people in the world that they just should get married and just be in a relationship constantly just so that they're financially secure. Like, you're not advocating for that, right? Because that definitely doesn't sound like biblical marriage to, or wait, maybe it does.
I mean, I am of course Christian, and that wouldn't be my primary reason. But since you are not sharing my basic assumption about marriage, that's here to this conversation.
Well, if you really value being married and marriage, then and if you lived in the U.S. and I know you live in Georgia, the country, not the state, then I would tell you that you need to be an atheist, because 2% of atheists get divorced, whereas 50% of born again Christians and double-digit percentages of Catholics and Protestants get divorced. So if you really want to stay away from divorce, you should probably become an atheist just based on those correlative statistics. And as correlation, not causation there. I'm actually kind of making a joke. So,
well,
yeah, but again, it's always going to come down to, whenever you see negative statistics like that, one of the things you need to ask yourself, is it related to the socioeconomic status of the parents? Because that is pretty key. If you're spending all your money just to survive, then there's not a lot of ways that you could be happy. And if you can't be happy, you can't really raise good kids well. As long as you can't raise good kids, you can't raise kids well. They may still turn out okay, but you're going to do better if you're happier. And there's an 80-year study on happiness that Harvard has done that shows that the single biggest factor in how happy a human being is the number of people they know. How do you know a lot of people if you're spending 12 hours a day working and absolutely no days off? How do you know people if you can't do that? And the answer is you can't. How do you know your kids if you're working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week? You can't. And if you don't know your kids, you can't really deal with those issues because of your socioeconomic status, because you're not making enough money to be able to afford time off. So you can know your kids. That's what it comes down to. And it'll always come down to, right? And it doesn't, and when I say socioeconomic status, also keep in mind that, you know, here in the US, childcare is not free. It is very, very expensive. So you can't always have childcare. So what if we made childcare free for everybody? What does that do? Right? Does that bring us up par with Europe? Yeah, sure does. Does that make things going to be happier? Yeah, probably does. So those are the things we always need to look at.
What are your thoughts to that, Otari?
My thoughts are that we can agree to disagree.
Say that again. I'm sorry. It's you may have cut out a little bit on my end. Can you say that one more time for me?
we can agree to disagree then.
So you're saying, yeah, I'm just not sure I'm getting clear audio, unfortunately, but
Yeah, I'm not either.
That's okay. That's okay, Otari. Because we've had a good conversation, and I just want to I'm going to let you go in just a few minutes, but before I do that, I just want to throw in just a quick little nugget, like for the wonderful viewers who are out there and watch all of the ACA shows. Some folks might have heard you earlier today advocating that abortion is not a good thing. My question would be, if we allow access to abortion in a medical context where it's done properly and people are safe about it, wouldn't that cut down on single parent households? And wouldn't that be a good thing in your eyes? Otari, you still there, or just broken by that? That's okay.
Yeah.
No worries, brother. Take some time, think about it, and just give us a call back. I thought you had a fantastic chat with Jimmy and Richard earlier today. So I thought we had a good chat today too, although we disagree. And I think you and I, Jim, did a pretty darn good job of trying to demonstrate why we did disagree. And I think at the end there, you brought up just such a phenomenal point that I want to make sure we repeat, which is one of the indicators that really helps with folks' mental and emotional well-being is being connected and having a community. And that's why, this place and this community and these people are just so freaking awesome. So
amen. Preach it, brother.
Yeah. Well, with that slight blasphemy, we're going to tell you that we now have a channel that houses all of the shows of the ACA in audio podcast form. You can visit tiny.cc/AEN podcasts, and you can hear all kinds of wonderful things, like all the latest shows from the Atheist Experience, Talk Heathen, Truth Wanted, the nonprofits, and others, all on one great channel. There are some super cool hosts that you'll see there, people you've probably never even heard from before. And sometimes you'll watch a show that you watched live a couple years ago and go, oh my gosh, I forgot that happened. That was a really great point. Because that's what happens whenever I go watch them. So, but we've got some more calls, Jim. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
All right. Well, we're going to try to take this call as best we can. We've got Nate. Him is an atheist in California and has some questions about the differences between sex and gender, and about sports and stuff. So we're going to do the best we can here, Nate. You're talking with Jim Barrows and Secular Rarity. What you got for us? What are your questions?
Hey guys, good afternoon. Thanks for taking my call. Well, we all know, we all are aware, and we don't want to go describing all of this, but in a word, we all understand sex is a biological thing. Gender is more in the head. It's about how a person feels. So
I'd say more societally.
It's societal. Yeah, societal.
Yeah, I'd say more. It's a society.
Yeah, it is more societal. Yes, I agree. So all that being said, right? What I have a little bit of difficulty, what I'm grappling with, is the fact that, let's say you have a person who's born male, right? Male in the sense with all the proper chromosomal appendages and assemblages in place and a penis and everything. But then as they grow up, right, they start identifying as female, right? Legit. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. Because a person feels like they're female. Great. And also to the end that they would want to be addressed as a she or her, or even a they, or depending on whatever. But then when it comes to, but remember that they're still biologically male, that they're stronger in general terms than females physically, isn't it? Now, that said, if they start participating in sporting events, right, where it's a female sporting, a swimming event or running event or something like that, we know that this person has an undue advantage, right, a physical advantage, clearly. But then they're allowed to participate in.
Well,
so you're
yeah. So I know where you're going with this, and let me pull this directly from real life here, real quick. This is an article on LGBTQ Nation, written in 2021, entitled "Two More Cis Black Women Banned from Olympics for Their Natural Testosterone Levels." So when you say that, you know, men have more testosterone than women, we're talking about an average. We're not necessarily talking about athletes. And women can have and do have unnaturally high or higher than average testosterone for their sex. It happens. So to say categorically that just because somebody was born with high levels of testosterone shouldn't compete against women, that doesn't make any sense. Right? I think this is, and these aren't the only two. This is just the first ones that I found. In fact, this wasn't even the example I was looking for. But you know, we have this problem in sports now where we're testing women, cis women, for unnaturally high levels of testosterone. But we're not doing it for the men. We're not looking at men and going, do you have abnormal levels of testosterone?
Right.
And we're not, do they have abnormal levels of estrogen?
Yeah, because that could play into it as well, depending on the sport.
Right. And so I think it's very misogynistic to do this. But I also, saying that, because there are two things that are true here, right? One, it's misogynistic to do this. And two, there is an issue here, right? Because yes, if you have, especially in like combat sports or full contact sports of any kind, then yes, you're going to have muscle mass issues, but we're going to have that no matter what. It does, leave the trans issue out of it. We've got a problem that our bodies, the human body, runs on a spectrum, and everybody can follow anywhere on that spectrum. And so we just need a better way to deal with it. And we don't even have to look at the LGBTQIA issue when it comes to this kind of stuff, right? Because right now we're banning cis women from sports. We're taking medals away from them because their bodies produce high levels of testosterone, and they decide they don't want to take drugs to lower their testosterone levels.
And you know, with bathrooms and changing rooms where this you know, supposed miracle cure that just prevents all trans from getting into certain spaces, apparently it's actually negatively affecting cis men and women more than it is, you know. So yeah, what do we do with that? What are your thoughts on that, Nate?
No, so I think we slightly deviated from what I was looking for. In that, I think Jim brought up a good point. I'm with you guys in that we have a long way to go to be able to properly solve this problem, right? No doubt in that. And Jim cited testosterone. We started with that. What I'm talking about is, you know, I'm not even going that far. All I'm saying is this person, as an example, a hypothetical person, of course, as an example, is somebody who is biologically fully male, in that if the person has sex with a woman, right, there will be a healthy full human baby.
But that's not how we determine the biological sex of people, right? So that may be a good place to go, Nate. Like when you say biological sex, because I hear more people using that terminology lately, and I think it's because they want to try and narrow what the actual criteria is that most biologists and you know, medical personnel, the people who are much smarter than me and have the degrees and stuff, you know, like when they talk about sex, it's there's a lot of different things that come into it. So for you, when you talk about biological sex, what are you thinking of? It sounds like chromosomes is at least a part of it. Is there any other aspect to it, or is it just chromosomes?
Yeah, no, so I have to be honest here. I'm not a biologist or scientist or anything like that.
Hey,
so we don't. I mean, we don't even.
Go ahead.
We don't have to get into the chromosomes or anything else, right? We just look at a couple of really basic things. For instance, less than 1% of the human population is born fully intersex with fully working penis and vagina both in the same body, right? And as you go either side of that bell curve, right, you're going to get people who have gone their entire lives and didn't know that they had a non-functional genital of some kind in their body. Why is it such a hard thing for people to understand that if that can happen with body parts, why can't that happen with the way the brain is wired? Right?
Not
Because
at all. Yeah, nobody has a problem with that. Jim.
So, all right. So what's your point then? Because we're agreeing on this.
My point then is, I'm saying that in my mind, right, let us say, this person who is born, if you ask a doctor and the doctor conducts all the checks on the person, right, and confirms that this is biologically a male baby, right? That baby grows up and then starts in their mind, right? They start feeling like they're
it's not in their mind.
A woman trapped in a man's body, right? Yeah,
it's right. But I just pointed out it's not in their mind, right? Because this goes back to my point I just made about if our genetics can put this two different genitals in the same body, have somebody be born intersexed, why can't it put a woman's brain in a man's body? Why is that so hard to accept?
It can, right? It absolutely can.
Okay, so then
no doubt.
Then if you're going to go into sports, right, then we get back into what I just pointed out, that article I just pointed out, where we have two cis women with very high levels of testosterone being told that if they're going to continue to compete, they've got to take drugs to adjust it so they're more normal women. Right? And that's not right.
Are you saying...
So where do you go from that? I mean, what's your point? There's just really no way to object to this without running afoul of either of these.
Yeah, it almost sounds, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, of course, Nate. But so I'm gonna ask, like, are you saying that there's something again inherent about like being born biologically male? We haven't even like fully sussed out what that means, but let's just say we're on the same page. Like, do you think there's something inherent about being born biologically male or going through like biological male puberty that like makes somebody, just forever unchangeably like physically superior to people who haven't gone through that?
I haven't given a thought to that particular angle, but what I was thinking of really was to say that isn't it unfair to the other women in that competition, right? Who are bound to lose that competition. Yeah. That's my point.
And my counter question to that is my question to that, or my answer to that is it fair to limit women who have unnaturally high levels of testosterone? Because that's the primary hormone we're talking about when it comes to athletics, right? Because that determines muscle mass and everything else. And you're either born with lots of fast twitch muscles for speed sports, like doing the mile and sprinting and all those sports, or power muscles for the power sports. Those things are all part of the genetics too. But we're really just talking about testosterone. And so I see this as an issue that combat sports needs to deal with, because the other thing that male hormones do is they make the bones a little bit bigger and thicker. That can be an issue. But I think the real solution to the problem is to ignore gender and put people into classifications so they're competing fairly based on something that is actually more objective than just sex and gender. And that was really the answer.
Yes, I agree with that. 100%. Yeah. But we're not there yet, right? Do you agree we are not there yet?
And we don't have any answers to this yet.
Different way. Yeah. That's what we're struggling with. Yeah.
Right. I mean, and the UFC's
not even true.
Yeah, the UFC is struggling with this right now. Is how do they figure it out? And I think the only answer is get rid of the women and men's categories and put them into by weight class, and weight class will take care of folks with bigger, stronger bones as well as muscle mass right there.
And
if you're going to, go ahead.
Oh, no, please finish up.
No, if you're going to be in some sort of speed sort, whether it's a foot race or swimming or any other human physical race type thing, then you probably should categorize them by how fast they're running, so that everybody who's running the mile is running at the same speed, and they're all competing fairly that way.
Yeah.
And ignore those classes. But even then, I don't know enough about this, and it's just not there yet. But yeah, it is an issue we have to deal with as a society as we recognize and no longer marginalize these folks.
Yeah, and I think, and that's exactly where I was going to go, Jim, which is I think in this scenario, in this discussion, right? Which sure, there's still some nuance to hash out. Dr. Ben and I, have had some wonderful private conversations where we've just gone, all kinds of which ways on this, because there is a lot of stuff to hash out. I totally agree. In this scenario, I would absolutely rather err on the side of inclusivity and allowing people to participate in what I consider a fundamental human right, which is the ability to participate in sports with your peers. I would rather we err on that side and be as freaking inclusive as we possibly can around the board. And I think we are when we say, yes, trans athletes absolutely can and should participate in sports. Again, with specifically UFC punching each other in the face sports, maybe we need to take an extra week to really hash out the criteria. But I think, when we look at what is gender and what is sex, it's a handful of different things. Both of them are a set of different boxes, and one single check on either side doesn't mean this or that. It's a very fluid thing, and that's awesome. As Christy Powell always says, embrace the squish of life. Like, it's awesome that is what life is like. And as we are more inclusive, yeah, maybe what we see is 100 years from now, totally, completely different sports categories, but different sports categories that are even more inclusive, even more fair, and allow all the people who love the sports to just have more freaking sports. Like, so I see only positives, on this side. But I think for the most part, Nate, you're kind of on the same page with us. It just sounds like you think there are still just some things that need to be hashed out, which again, I think so too. But yeah, give us your thoughts on that, and then we'll grab some of these super chats. Okay.
Yeah. So the quick thought on that is, I am fully on how you folks are thinking, in that it's not a cracked problem, right? There still have some ways to go on that, for sure. But where I will kind of part ways a little bit is secular rarities with you on this one, in that at this juncture, because we don't have a full solution, we shouldn't be, simply shoehorning inclusivity in that way, because it is unfair to the larger contingent of female athletes in that particular race who have struggled all their lives to
but
be
where
where
is
they're at. And certainly,
I know I'm jumping in. I know I'm interrupting you, Nate, but where is there? Because I hear this, and I don't think I don't think what you're saying here is as strong as I'm gonna put this back to you. But like, I hear these people saying in their talking points a lot of times, like how, trans girls and trans women are just destroying sports. They're just wiping out the cis women's. Oh my gosh, the competitors have no ability to compete. They're getting dominated. Where? Just give me one example where this has happened, and then I'll give you like 500 examples where trans athletes participate in sports, either individual or team-based, right? Where, funny enough, they just do like every other human being that participates in the sport. And sometimes they're on the podium, and sometimes they're just a little bit slower. So do you know of any sport that is currently just being overrun and dominated by trans women or trans girls? Like, because if not, then I kind of feel like, hey, we're in the same boat again, which is, if we start seeing that happen, Oh my gosh, absolutely, you guys. Let's all get together and let's talk about it and let's hash it out some more. But if we're just like yelling about a problem that doesn't exist, gosh, I'd really love to save that breath and yell about some problems that do exist, because there are a lot of them.
I agree. Yes, absolutely. And to your question on can I cite something that's so wide ranging and taken over by trends and all that? Don't get me wrong, right? I'm 100% on everybody's side here, and I respect what someone feels as in terms of the gender, and I'm very happy to comply with it. But I'm just trying to call straight here, and I may be completely wrong, right? Of course. Recently there was this couple of swimming events, right, where
Sure.
Unfortunately, I don't have it in front of me.
Do you know how many swimming events, both collegiate and professional, in just the United States alone have happened this year already? It's September. We're 10 days in. Do you have a ballpark figure off the top of your head?
No,
because I do.
Sorry.
They're in the thousands.
No,
They're in the thousands.
Yeah.
They're in the thousands.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got thousands and thousands of competitions that are happening, which means we've got tens of thousands of athletes, and one single trans individual was able to make one freaking podium placement. And like,
Yeah.
hey, I get it. That's technically more than there was 50 years ago. But like the numbers we're talking about are 0 to 1, right?
Well,
or 1
as far
to 2.
as we know, 50 years
As
ago.
far as because trans athletes have always been participating in sports. It's only been recently where people have really started to get up in arms. But I think overall, Nate, honestly, we're on the same page, man, for the broad strokes of it. And you are, I'm just assuming a little bit here, and we all know how dangerous that can be. But I think you're one of those people who would be shoulder to shoulder with all of us here in supporting trans rights and human rights across the board. So yeah, I think this was a good call, and hopefully we hashed out some stuff. We are going to let you go, Nate. So thanks so much, and do call us back in the future, man. I think we might have some other really good conversations. But yeah, I'm all for people participating, in as many things as we can possibly do when people freaking want to. And sports is just one of those things that has this incredible ability. Talk about transcending ability here, Jim, to borrow language from the religious here. But there's something about, just watching big sporting events and getting excited with a bunch of people who just love, whatever soccer team it is or dart thrower or whatever. You'd be surprised how exciting a professional bag toss championship can be. It is quite intense, although that could have something to do with the inebriation of the crowd. But
Could be, yes, very much so.
Anyway, once again, we are skirting that line of the crew just completely firing us. So I better do the right thing by telling you that every single month we have a limited edition t-shirt, and you can check out that t-shirt in the store. This month's shirt is God's Kryptonite, Judges 1:19. He couldn't defeat iron chariots. So visit tiny.cc/merch ACA to get that now. There is all kinds of other great merch as well. Like you can see there, you got the hoodies, you got the beanies, you got the phone cases and I think tote bags. Am I just making that up? I don't know. Anyway, we do real quick want to send a massive thank you to the crew who not only puts this show together every week, but puts up with Jim and myself before and after this show. Can we get the crew cam up there? Can we see those wonderful faces?
Oh, there they are.
Yeah, look at that. Look at that. Guys, it is, in case you weren't sure, it is, all the work is done by that adorable dog and that adorable cat. They are
mostly the cat.
Mostly the cat. Yes. Yeah, cats are very, they're very good at like managing tough situations. They do a lot of delegating. I don't know if anybody else has noticed that or not, but yeah. Anyway.
And we never get on camera Justin Looney, who answers all of our email.
Yes.
And really, I mean, yeah, those guys keep us on air and do all that. but Justin is our moat from the
Absolutely.
insanity on the email.
Absolutely.
And there was a time when hosts had to answer that email on occasion. And I've been there for that. And it's not something anybody really wants
They
to do.
can be rough.
Some of these
I've
folks,
had a couple myself.
yeah, they could be batshit crazy sometimes, but also they can be heart-wrenching and
Yes.
gut-wrenching and just really horrifying stories of people who've had horrifying experiences with religion. And Justin does all that, answers all those questions with great aplomb and grace. So we cannot forget him as well.
Absolutely.
And I know sometimes we do. So
that is true. That is true. And I'm glad that you mentioned that, because this is again, this is a community, folks. This is not just, myself or Jim or, just us two or just a few other people. This is a whole bunch of people that make this stuff happen and keep it going on a daily basis. And then, of course, there's y'all. There's all the wonderful people that help make up the community, right? Everybody that comes here and hangs and, likes the video and comments on the video, which if you haven't, by the way, I mean, what are you doing? This has been great. But we do have some support from some wonderful viewers out there right now. I'm going to read. So we've got €5 from Flo G. Says, greetings from Germany. Unfortunately, the site where to buy the bricks is blocked where I live. So please take this instead and keep up the awesome work. Well, thank you, Flo. We really appreciate that. And thanks for letting us know. I don't know if there's something we can do to maybe take a look at that and maybe figure it out. But either way, we appreciate it. And that's a good reminder, folks. We want your feedback. If we did something good or we did something bad, there's a lot of ways to tell us. A super chat is a great way. If you want to tell myself and Jim how terrible of a job we're doing today, oh my gosh, feel free to send in some money and we'll read it live. But TV at Atheist-Community is always the best place to get a hold of us. And then we've got Patricia McGill, who's been a member for 2 years, sending us $10 saying, write my name on a new P-trap under the bathroom sink. I don't want to see you end up with just a pile of new bricks in the backyard. Yeah, that's good. I like that. A useful, yes. I appreciate that. That's good for us to keep in mind. So, but folks, we have some calls and we're going to take those calls.
We just got an answer to Flo G from Germany. Right into TV at atheist-community.org for the brick.
Yeah. Okay.
So we just got that in our side chat here from I guess it's from us because it says host, but really that's our Lords and Masters, George Soros. I mean, Greg.
So Flo G, I hope you're still listening. Cause hit us up at that email address and we can touch base with you. So it won't be me. It will probably be a wonderful person like Justin Looney, just so you know, cause that's, he's much better at that than I am. But Jim, we got calls, we got a little time. So we're going to try to knock out a couple. Yeah. If you want to call us, we do still have some open lines, y'all. We got a little bit of time. So if you want to sneak one and if
you're a theist, you go to the top of the queue,
top of the list.
We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 calls right now that we got to get to. But if you're a theist, you become call number 1. So give us a holler.
Awesome. Let's guys.
Talk about what you believe and why.
Let's see. Let's go to Texas. We've got Corey. Him is an atheist, and it sounds like you've got a question about evolution. Hey, Corey, you're chatting with Secular Rarity and Jim Barrows. What you got for us?
Hey guys, how y'all doing?
Doing good for Sunday.
So, my question is take a tiny bit of explaining. Obviously, we know how evolution works. A random example, the camels that evolved over millions of years along with the desert evolving as we know it today so they could, adapt to it and, live through it. Mm-hmm. My question is mostly for mankind and humanity is, when you go back to the Australopithecus species, when you have the Homo erectus, it seems like their environments to evolve into what we are known as today seemed fairly stable as far as other than, you know, heat and cold and wet and dry and stuff like that. But today we have such advances in technology and science and medical, and I feel today we're constantly changing our environment on a frequent basis, whether it be digging, whether it be building, whether it be, you know, smog. I feel like it's constantly changing. So the two questions I have in regards to that, which are kind of blending together, is one, how does that affect our evolution, and how would that affect the evolution cycle if we as a human species have never really encountered such a constantly changing environment? As well as, is it possible that we could actually fast forward evolution, being instead of waiting millions of years to become immune to coronavirus or the flu, for example, we have vaccines now. Is it possible that we can fast forward evolution, and how does our constant changing environment, like animals, for instance, all they got to do is evolve, and to our environment changes, like when we cut down forests and stuff. How does this affect our evolution?
Yeah,
well,
so
that's a good question.
Please,
I don't know that there's a good answer to that question. I think a couple of things.
That's why I'm calling you guys. Sorry, that's why I'm calling you guys, because we'll
do our best.
Question. It's
we'll do our best. There is no such thing really as speed of evolution. I mean, evolution happens, and sometimes it happens quickly, sometimes it doesn't. You know, as we evolve against diseases, those people who had COVID and survived it, at least the earlier versions of it, are all immune to it, and so that's changed. Whether or not they pass that down, I think, is still to be seen. But you know, we've only been around for 100,000 years, and to call the climate stable for 100,000 years, I mean, I think you can pick any 100,000 years and go, yeah, that's stable, because we're not talking on the timescales that it still happens. We're not fully evolved. There's no such thing as fully evolved. Will we evolve to handle higher levels of pollution? Probably, because those who can't handle it will die out. If they die out before they reproduce, the only folks you got to have surviving are the ones who can handle higher levels of pollution. But then the question becomes, how rapidly does the pollution level change? It can change so rapidly that we don't have any chance for that type of evolution to happen, right? To have those who can't handle it die off and those who can reproduce. That takes, 25 years in a generation for humans, roughly. So, we don't evolve all that fast. And that's despite the fact that we've got something like 40 mutations each, something like that. Maybe it's higher. I'm sure somebody in chat will check that for me. But I mean, it's hard to say because a lot depends on what the climate does. The climate's changing very, very rapidly. Like when I was growing up as a kid, 40 years ago, Category 5 hurricanes were unheard of. We have one every year now for the last 5-10 years. So, we're heating up. And we've got that massive storm coming in, which is supposed to be a Category 5 plus. We don't have anything that goes higher than Category 5. So, that looks like it might hit the East Coast. Are we going to be able to evolve or technologize or develop technology to survive what's coming? That's a really good question. And those are things we got to answer. Because it's happening faster than maybe we can adjust. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Yeah, it's a really, really interesting question, I think, Corey. And Jim and I are just kind of speculating, and like throwing a bunch of wet spaghetti at the wall and, kind of seeing what the evidence, shows out to be the case. So the first thing I want to say is just that, like, all living organisms, right? Like as long as the species is still going, man, it seems to be like there's these little changes that keep happening, and it just eventually, once we have enough time to separate these changes and they've become fixed in the population and so forth, then it's like, oh my gosh, this is something totally different. Like, it used to be this lizardy looking thing. Now it's this more bird-like thing. Like, awesome. But yeah, that's still happening for us as people, you know? And 100,000 years from now, humans could have evolved into a completely different species. It could be the case that Homo sapiens completely die out and this new species just takes over the world. It could be the case that this new species that evolves from Homo sapiens lives at the same time and alongside Homo sapiens. This has happened for a bunch of hominids, you know? And there's really, really great places, by the way, that you can, I'm sure you probably know one of the hosts here, Forrest Valkai. Guy has a lot of freaking great stuff on this. Erica Gutsick Gibbon does as well too. And Creationists Dan, like, all three of those people have a lot of super knowledge on this. I'm going to tell you now what is my little SR hypothesis-y thingy. Okay. So this is in no way, shape, or form something that you should just be like, yeah, that's what scientists think. But I do think there's some good backing to this from a lot of the stuff that I've heard out there. So there's two different types. There's two different types of cells in the body, right? So you've got the ones that pass on to the next generation, which are like germline cells. And then you've got the ones that are just like all going to die off whenever that specific individual dies. And those are the somatic cells. So there was a long time where people were like, hey, if I get really big muscles when I'm alive, my kid will also have big muscles because that's how it works. It doesn't, because those big muscles aren't related to the cells that pass to the offspring, right? But if we start to create a culture amongst a social species that actively looks for individuals with large muscles to reproduce with, I think it's pretty easy to see how over a very long time period it's possible that somehow kind of plays with the germ cells, right? In just the sense of like, now the individuals that are reproducing more often are ones that may just have this genetic mutation where they can just, their body is more programmed to like get those muscles easier. And I'm just using the word program there just for simplicity's sake, you know? But like, there are certain aspects about our genes that say like, you're more likely to do this or not do this. And so if we just start seeing a bunch of people with really large muscles just banging all the time and making a bunch of kids, those traits could ultimately be selected for, right? So there's a little bit of play on both sides of those types of cells. But again, this is just total Elliot, just spitting my little hypothesis at you. I think where we're seeing the largest evolution amongst the human species is in the brain. I think the wiring of our brain is what's going to be the thing that really radically changes over the next 50,000 to 100,000 years, as opposed to like the outward physical appearance, right? But I don't know. Yeah. Forrest definitely is a super great, super great person to touch base with. Again, those other wonderful people, Erica Gutsick Gibbon, Creation Myths Dan. I know Jim spouted a bunch. I spouted a bunch at you, Corey. And we do have some other great calls, and we're getting close to the end. So just give us your quick little thoughts on this, and maybe call us back in the future. Okay. What do you think about what we said?
I definitely, respect y'all's viewpoints. And that's why I called initially, was because I wanted to get an opinion from, people who knew what they were talking about. I sparked the idea of the question. I watched the Ken Ham and Bill Nye Creationist Museum tour today, and I felt like I lost brain cells, and it just kind of sparked that idea. And I saw that y'all were live today, so I figured I would call in and ask that question because I thought it was very important, and I thought it was very interesting. So, but that's all I got for you guys.
Well, we're super glad you called, Corey. Yeah. And give us a call back if you get a question, something similar in the future where it just kind of sticks in your brain and you're not really sure. And definitely just keep watching the channel because Forrest is going to be back, and there will be, Dr. Ben will be back, on the ACA stuff too in the future. There's all kinds of freaking people that we've got here who have even more knowledge and can point you to some great studies. So call us back in the future and hang out with us. Even on the fan run Facebook pages, Jim. Do you know about this?
Yeah,
There's
I do.
fan run Facebook pages for Talk Heathen and the Atheist Experience, bunch of ACA stuff, and people will go there and just chat about genetics and human rights and religion messing up the world and stuff. It's awesome. It's super great. So check that out too. But we have a couple of other calls. We are going to try to get to all of the people that are hanging on the lines for us. So do just stay there. I'm going to let you guys know that at the end of every month, coming up this month, actually, September 24th of this year, if you're in Austin, you should come hang out at the live broadcast of Talk Heathen and the Atheist Experience, okay? You will get to hang out at the Free Thought Library with a bunch of wonderful heathens and blasphemers and all kinds of great people, as Talk Heathen is hosted by Objectively Dan and Sophia Spina. And then the Atheist Experience will be hosted by Objectively Dan and Jamie the Blind Limey. All three very wonderful people. And you won't want to miss that, folks. So doors open at noon, and we hope we can see you there. And there isn't a bunch of parking like at the actual building, y'all, but there's a bunch of parking like around. Like seriously, you will definitely be able to find a space. So do come find your space and claim it, and then watch those. So yeah,
absolutely. And the live show is a lot of fun to watch. Everybody is there, and it makes the experience wonderful. We got multiple spaces to watch the show at. If you just want to watch the show and see us live, we're behind the glass. But you can see them live. And then if you want to kibitz, there's a room where you could watch the show in kibitz, yell at the TV and do all the things you do normally, only this time, instead of doing it with just those you invite to watch with you, you're doing it with a whole crowd of people, and it's a lot more fun that way.
Exactly.
So.
And there's oftentimes pizza that is gotten, but sometimes, not always, lemon squares. But there is food at the very least of some variety. So
come break bread.
That's right. That's right. We'll split the pizza to feed the 5,000. Yeah. I love that. It's much better miracle in my opinion.
Yeah.
But we have somebody giving us a call. They have given us the name Theist. They are also a theist, by the way, but him calling from the US of A. Does living as a religious person lead to a better life than living as a non-theist? Well, Theist, thanks so much for hanging out with us and giving us a call today. I'm going to say no. Jim, what are your thoughts? And then we'll kick it right back to you, caller.
Can you define better life? Can you give us some parameters how to make that judgment?
That's probably
what do you mean by better?
Yeah. What do you think, Theist?
Yeah, for sure. Let's say happier, more contentness. Even I would say more community and more socially connected. Those few things. You can even put wealth a little bit in there, but I wouldn't.
Yeah. So I'll go back to what I said earlier. The 80-year study that Harvard's done on happiness, where they have concluded that the number of connections you have. I think that Christianity in particular and many religions have done a really good job of building communities. And as atheists, we're doing that slowly but surely, but also for atheists, there are many communities that you can do. And you can go to like Meetup and Facebook and find all these people who are doing secular things, whether it's bowling or scuba diving or sailing or underwater basket weaving or drinking coffee or enjoying wine. Doesn't really matter, whatever you like. You can do that without any religious background. So if you increase the number of people that you know, but you don't need to, there's nothing about religion that makes community building that humans need to be happy is unique to religion. So in that aspect, no. In fact, religion does a better job in many ways of increasing your tribalism in limiting the number of people you have, because as I said earlier, it gives you these rules to make angel food cake when you may actually prefer devil's food or pudding or ice cream shakes. So in that aspect, no, I don't think that it does everybody any good unless everybody's going to be the same tribe or the same religion, and that's not going to happen anytime soon. So I don't see anything about being religious that is unique that would make me believe that being religious is better in that respect.
Yeah. What do you think on all that, Theist?
I have a lot of thoughts. Is it fine if I just kind of ramble for a bit? It's fine with you guys.
Sure.
Yeah, just
did.
go for a minute or two. We'll jump in, I'm sure, in a second. Go ahead.
Sure. So I feel like went from the internet age, kind of like, let's say from like 2008 to 12, you'll see some like people like Sam Harris, and you may even see like more atheists, where I even argue, like, I don't know about the community thing, because I know there are like few studies that said like religious people were happier, but let's just say live, at least they're more wealthy, they have more educated, they even think more rationally, they'll think in terms of like some kind of like a robotic way, like more like objective, I would say. But the thing is, now that I don't think it was atheism that did this. I just think you self-selected high IQ people. Like, I think for the average 100 IQ person or something like this, I think religion does a much better job because they have more stake in the game. Their lives maybe not as good, but they really come together and make it better. I feel for maybe like a 120, someone who's way independent-minded can think through things. But they can even fall in cog. Yeah, sorry, go first. Yeah.
No, it's okay. No, it's okay. Real quick, because honestly, I just want to kind of like, this is kind of a moment where I'm feeling a bit of deja vu from a caller earlier, in the sense of it almost sounds like you just said a thing that's really not good for like what your argument is. And I just want to make sure that you're not saying this. You're not saying that religion works better for dumber people, right? Is that what you're arguing? That like, if you're dumb, be religious because that'll make you happier? I just want to make sure that that's not, because that feels like not a good point, because I wouldn't even say that as a non-religious person, but I just want to make sure that you're not saying that, right?
No, I'll say that what you're saying I'm not saying is probably exactly right. I think for a median person, like a 100 IQ person who cannot be like, who cannot do a lot of, if you're like, you can really independently think and read some peer-reviewed study, but the average person does not even have the capability to do this, I don't think, be genuine with you. So, the average person is looking at TikTok and has a 10-second like brain span. So, I mean, like that kind of person, I'm saying.
Okay. So I would just since you.
Oh, let me pick up here real quick. So a couple of things. One, I'm aware of the Pew Research that you mentioned. And the Pew Research is correlation, not causal. The Harvard study that I mentioned is causal, not correlational, right? And so when you look at that Harvard study that they've been doing for over 80 years now, so they've got a ton of data to back this up. They're saying that, yes, Christianity does a better job of creating community. That's what they're saying. And so that explains the correlation. It's not religion itself. It's the community that religion builds. It's the community. You mentioned Sam Harris and smart and dumb. Well, so the problem that you have is your sample size. Your sample size is people like myself, Secular Rarity, and others who are in the limelight to some degree. And I don't consider myself to be in the limelight anywhere near close to what Sam Harris and some other folks are. The problem is that unlike probably you, and I don't know for sure, I know a lot of atheists, and not all of them are into the philosophy, they're into the knowledge or anything else. They have just found the claims they've been presented with to not work, and they have just stopped believing. And I think that is, my anecdotal evidence suggests, that's probably the vast case of that. So intelligence has nothing to do with atheism, and you're only seeing the tip of the ice, the tippy top of the iceberg of atheists, so to speak. So I don't think any of those things are actually true. And yes, I do agree that the average person is more interested in TikTok and Facebook and what's on TV and that kind of thing in pop culture than they are anything else. And I would include atheists in that. I don't think atheists are any different than theists in that respect. So it's not a matter of intelligence. It's not a matter of any of that. It's just, what are you interested in? I know several atheists I have tried to get on this show many times and put some pressure on to do so, and they're just like, they have zero interest in it. And that's fine. I think most atheists are that way. They have no interest in being on a show like this. They have no interest in getting into the debate. They just want to live their lives. So yeah, I don't find anything that you said to be particularly convincing, including the Pew reports, because they're correlation, not causal. I don't know if you.
Okay. Yeah, that makes some sense. I agree with you. I mean, like, yeah, for example, if you're looking like at Dawkins or Harris or something like this is just like, it doesn't correlate with the community. So I agree with you on this, but I'm still a little bit iffy is like, I'm really skeptical if someone like follows, let's say, a religious path and versus like a complete secular path. Will they really? Okay, like let me give you just one walkthrough, right? If someone genuinely follows the religious path, they will not have children out of wedlock, for one, right? They'll probably be married and then have children. Number two, assuming, depending on the religion, depending on also which religion they're following, they probably will not do drugs. They'll probably be away. And even if there's some religions, they may even be praying 5 times a day or 3 times a day, or depending on which faith you're going on. So, I mean, this will keep them grounded. But if someone goes like, I feel like maybe a secular path, and let's say someone just is like a hedonist, they could go to like just like doing drugs.
So the problem is that So the problem is that most atheists aren't drug users. Most atheists that I know aren't drug users. Most atheists, see, I don't know of anybody who's actually studied atheists to answer these questions. But to say that atheists are more likely to go down a bad path than a religious person, to me, is just utter bullshit. Excuse my language, because you don't have any data to base that on. As for getting divorced, okay, so what? Only religion says that you have to be married your entire life, right? You get married once, that's it, you're done. That goes back to, again, my earlier comment. Not everybody likes angel food cake, and people change and they grow and they become different people over time. And sometimes that means you no longer really like the person you're with because you don't like what they changed, or you no longer have the same interests. You don't do anything together. And so the only thing you do together is live in the same house. That's not a marriage, right? That is not anything worth having right there. If all you're doing is living together and you're just roommates, that's not a marriage. So to say all these things and get in those examples, okay, fine, those are examples, but what basis in reality do we have? We don't. All I can say is that I probably know more atheists than you do. And in my experience and my anecdotal experience, everything you just said is completely wrong. Most of the atheists that I know are better human beings than a number of apologists are, than a number of Christians that I know are. Especially the evangelical right in the United States. The average atheist that I know, anecdotally, is better than the average evangelical Christian who's out there supporting companies who support abusing LGBTQIA in the name of helping them, who are forcing people to stay married even though they're unhappy because that's what God wills. Those types of things, to me, aren't good things. So we can differ on that, but I just don't see where anything you're saying actually makes sense or actually represents the average atheist in my anecdotal evidence. Because again, I don't have anything to support this. I just have a large number of atheists that I know and this community that I know of. So, but if you have an actual study of atheists and how many of them turn to drugs and how many of them do bad things, I'd really love to see that particular piece of research. Because as far as I know, there isn't. Sure.
I mean, there are a lot of points you made. Okay, so for like drug use, I don't have a worldwide thing. I know I've only seen, I remember one study in California where they found that people who are more religious are less likely to do drugs. I think like California State University Sacramento did this study.
Was it a correlational study or was it causal?
I believe it was causal. It was done in 2014, I believe.
Atheism causes more drug use. So you're saying atheism causes more drug use.
Religious.
That's what you're saying.
Less religious. But this was only done in California, too, to be honest with you. I mean, this study. So, I mean, I'm not saying it's
But again, you're saying, because it's causal, that atheism causes more drug use in California.
That's for the study. I don't know if I agree 100% with the study, but I mean, and I don't know.
But yeah, that's not an answer to the question. The answer to the question is yes or no. Are you saying the study claims that atheism causes drug use? That's a causal research when you're looking for that. So that's a causal thing that is not correlational. So are you saying, does the article you're quoting say atheism causes drug use in California?
Sure. I would say it's beyond my circle of competency. I mean, I don't remember off the top of my head. So let's just say no, I mean, to be safe.
Okay, yeah, that's the safest thing to do, because the next question is, what is it about atheism that causes that, given my anecdotal evidence that there is not an increase in drug use among atheists. My second question is, let's assume that it's true, so what? If they're not harming anybody else, there isn't any big deal about drug use to me. And I don't care what the drug is. As long as you don't harm anybody else, do what you want to yourself. Just don't harm anybody else. So. Okay.
Then I had another question. It kind of like went, how do you define better or worse? Like you were saying evangelicals or other thing. Like let's say an evangelical is against like LGBTQ, right? I mean, they could argue we're better. I mean, for example, in homosexual men, there's certain diseases.
That is an excellent question.
Far more prevalent. So let's say the evangelical says objectively, I am preventing less like people from getting AIDS or something like this. Correct?
So here's the way that I judge things as to better or worse, moral or immoral. If an action increases the overall happiness of the human population, it's good. If an action decreases the overall happiness of the entire human population, then that's bad. So if you're against a small portion, like less than 1% of the human race, because why, I don't know, you're making people happy. The evangelical stance on LGBTQIA increases the number of suicides in that community. And that's not a good thing, because when you now that you've got the suicide direct correlation between those two things, you also have a decrease in happiness of the families of those suicides, and that goes on. And so that is a bad thing.
Okay, maybe. Okay, I have been two questions. One kind of has to go with LGBTQ. The other has to go with your other thing on happiness. For the LGBTQ, I'm not like 1,000% sure on the stats, but if you look like it's like 2%, 3%, 5%. This is for millennials, I'm saying 5% for like that age group, 5%, and now it's like 20% of like I think millennial or Gen Y or something or LGBT. Do you think?
Can you cite your source for your stats? Can you cite your source?
I could get it if you want me. For sure. This like I'm not going to say it's beyond my circle of competency on this one. There is a genuine study I did see on this one. Like I could figure it out, but okay, it's higher than 10% for Gen Y. At least I'm 100% confident on this one. Based on, but if it's going up by such a rapid rate, how could that? Is it? Or do you think it could be a trend? And number two, on the happiness, what if you have something like a VR game, like a VR game where people are just in an illusion and they consent to it? I mean, and then 60% just want to be in some VR game that just puts drugs in their veins and puts them happy.
I wouldn't consider drug-induced happiness to be happiness.
Why?
Because it's artificial. It's got to come from you. I mean, although otherwise, all you're doing is forcing people into something. That's why I disagree with cigarettes. Even if you're going to make cigarettes completely safe for the outside population, you're causing people to be addicted to something deliberately, and I don't think that's a good idea.
Social media.
Social media? What about it?
Yeah. Okay, I mean, what about it? YouTube, whatever. I mean, this is artificial. This is completely artificial. It's the same exact concept. Would you ban this?
No, it's not. YouTube's not a drug. How do you go from drugs to YouTube? That makes no sense.
Okay, TikTok, let's say.
How do you go from drugs to TikTok? How do you go from drugs to any social media? How do you go from drugs to social media? Drugs are chemicals that directly affect the brain. Social media isn't. So how do you equate these two things?
What about pornography?
Again, how do you go from drugs to pornography? These are not the same categories of things that we're talking about.
Sure, Andrew Huberman, who was like a Stanford neurologist, neuroscientist, was saying that for example, it spikes up dopamine far higher than normal, correct? And then he was
dopamine is naturally produced in the brain. Drugs are not. So if you hit people with happy drugs, it's not being produced inside the brain. So how are you equating these two things? We're talking about drugs being injected into people and dopamine being naturally produced from things people enjoy. These are not the same thing. I made that very, very clear.
Okay, so if let's say there was like some what's it called, like consensual, you put someone in this like porn room, what like just completely, I don't know, like pleasures you in every single way, and everyone wanted to just do this instead of work, and let's say there was some feasible way to do this, would this be like,
is it harming anybody else? Is it harming anybody else? Is the net effect negative to society? And I think the answer to that question would be yes.
Okay, how is it yes? Tell me.
Yeah. Wait, exactly. Finding a harm, I don't understand what you're trying to do here. And I really don't like it when a guest come in and try to cite studies that they don't understand. And they expect the host to just trust their analysis on the studies, and expect them to just live on air, go look into the studies and do the research for them. Like, this takes time and effort. And what are we supposed to do? Just to trust their analysis based on what? I mean, the average person that has a very bad understanding of what studies say. So, just dumping your understanding of these studies here live on air and expecting us to just, debunk you. This takes hours and hours of research. And I see Jim is trying to do that live on air with you guys. And I think, I don't know if that's a fair expectation that people have of the host of the hosts here, of the host and the co-host. I think we should, Jim, what do you think? I see that being done constantly on live shows, and I think it needs to be called out as a unfair method, because there's no way for us to live on air check whether or not they had a good to go look at the study, look at the methodology, look at the conclusion. But on average, like, we know that average people come up with the wrong interpretations of the research. So that's what I tend to do.
I don't have
assume that.
Well, I ask for evidence all the time, Armin, and that's kind of why I do it, is because I'm willing to, okay, let's go see what this says. But this is also why I ask questions like, is it a correlational study or is it a causal study? These are differences, right? And correlational studies are great for a whole lot of things. I'm not knocking correlation studies at all, but correlation is not causation. If correlation was causation, then ice cream causes an increase in crime. That's not the case.
Yep.
But in this case, if you're going to come on this show and you're going to try and make claims and then go, well, that's outside my circle of expertise, when I challenge you on something, then yeah, you're not coming loaded for bear. You're not bringing your A game. I bring my A game every time, and I have no notes here. I mean, I could probably just show you what's on my screen right now. Literally, what's on my screen right now is on the left side of the screen is Rendezvous, where I see myself and Armin, and we got a little chat there. I've got call in studio. Occasionally, I swipe left, and I go and I type something in on Google. That's how I've done everything for this entire show. Everything I refuted every caller on has been done live, and I don't have a problem with that. But if I'm going to do that, and I require that of myself, I require that of my callers. And Theists, that's not something you have done. You haven't cited a single study for anything. You're just over here spitting out stuff as fast as you can. You don't seem to understand the difference between something that is injected into you and something that happens because of something you choose to do. Can people get addicted to things? Yes, they can. Is that good for society? No, it's not. It's really that simple, right? And that's why I phrase the things the way that I did, is so that you understand that it is all of society is made happier or all of society is made unhappier, not the individual, because we're all in this together, right? Every single person on this planet is being affected by that huge Category 5 hurricane that's getting ready to hit the East Coast, whether we want to believe that or not, right? Because that hurricane, that storm gets started near the equator, comes off the coast of Africa, and then starts heading up the Atlantic. And guess what? All the heat in Africa, that gets blown out in the Atlantic, that gets turned into a hurricane. We're all in this together. So it's all of humanity that has to be made better for something to be considered good. Because I'm not tribal. Got
Yeah.
anything to
All
reply
right,
to
we
that?
do need to take.
Oh,
We do need to take other calls though. So
okay. We'll leave it at that. Yeah, next time, Theist, bring your A game, bring stuff come up with stuff that's inside your circle of expertise.
Could I say before leaving? Let me say one thing. The source was Gallup. Gen Z 2021 20.8% LGBT. Millennials 10.5%. Gen X 4.2%. Baby Boomers 2.6%. Traditional
Good for them.
0.8%.
Yeah, caller. I'm Theist. I'm glad you brought this up again, because this is a trend that we see just across the board, right? Like, this is something that it's like people have always existed. We've just never had them part of the, the studies and the conclusion and stuff. So like, it's just, we've had LGBTQ people all the way throughout human history, and we have just mountains of evidence that demonstrates this. And it's only been recently that when we've done these studies, we've started saying things like, hey, maybe we should start including LGBTQ people in these studies. So that's why we're seeing a seeming jump. But again, that's going to just normal population levels.
And thanks for coming up with an actual reference, but it's not really positive or negative.
Yeah.
It doesn't support your position. Okay, it's 10%. I was wrong. It's 1%. Okay, now I know it's 10%. Yay, yeah. It's 10%.
And what's wrong with 10% or 15% of Gen Z being LGBTQ? I don't think we've got an answer to that.
It's not harming anybody.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
And just one point. It's really easy to figure out that it's just a bunch of nonsense, because they cite the data and they come up with the conclusions that experts are not. These are not the conclusions that the experts are coming up with. Like, you don't even need to have research background or scientific background. All you just need to use Occam's razor. None of the experts are coming with the same data that you're coming up with. You're interpreting it, and you're coming up with conclusions that the experts are not. Who do you think is right? Do you think you saw something in this data that none of the experts are seeing? And if so, why? How did you do that? Just trust the expert.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to leave it, Armin, because honestly, that's exactly I think what you and Jim were saying the whole time. And I co-sign on that 100%. And so, Theist, we do appreciate you calling us. We know it was towards the end, so we didn't have as much time. Hey, give us a call back next week, man. Like, we're on at 4:30 Central Time every freaking Sunday. It's not that hard. Just hit us up at like 4:35. Then we can have an even longer discussion about it. But folks,
real quick,
please.
If you're going to say that the LGBTQIA community is unnatural, here's what I don't want any theist to do. Do not, under any circumstances, go Google dolphins having sex with blowholes.
Ooh.
Don't Google that.
Yeah.
Don't Google dolphin promiscuity. Don't
look up the entire species of lizards that are all female but still engage in sexual practices so that they can have birth. So fascinating stuff. And just a good reminder, folks, that even though sometimes we as people feel like we're outside of the whole like nature thing, we're not. We're very much just right in the smack dab center of it. So and with that, I have to ask you, wonderful people, a question. It's have you ever looked up at the stars or felt a sense of longingness inside of you and said, I really wish I could see more content that the ACA creates. Where in the world could I find this? Well, the good news is you don't have to look in a dusty old book or to the quote unquote heavens, because we've got you covered. We actually have 2 24/7 live streams going all the freaking time. AXP TV delivers a constant stream of shows, clips, and specials from the over 26 seasons of the Atheist Experience. And now Heathen TV provides you with clips from Talk Heathen. So watch or listen to your favorite hosts and discover some hosts you've never heard of. Visit tiny.cc/AXPTV and tiny.cc/Heathen TV to join in the fun. And we have a wonderful super chat as well we'd like to read from Found a Marble, giving us 10 pounds, says, I do believe in miracles. I witnessed SR turn into Armin. amazing.
Yes,
and
indeed.
we're going to leave it there, and all of our audio only listeners will not exactly know what we're talking about, but just don't forget that you can come back and watch this on the YouTubes as well and see our beautiful faces. So we may have proven miracles today, folks.
Let's see if we can get through these next two calls pretty quickly, because they seem kind of easy.
Let's do it. Let's
got Illinois and Mr. Porter, who wants to know, what is the most cringe evidence you've been given by theists? Is that correct, Mr. Porter?
That is correct, Jim.
Okay. Awesome. For me, it's look at the trees or anything along those lines.
Mine is appeal to mystery. Whenever after like 10 minutes of conversation, somebody just goes, well, that's a mystery. It's like, well, that's not a good answer. So what do you think, Armin?
Mine was recently on the Persian show that we have. I was doing a debate. The guy's main argument for the existence of God was the existence of chicken, because chicken is so tasty and so many people like chicken. Like, how could you? No, he was serious. He was dead serious. It was like, just look at chicken. So many people like chicken, and there's so much chicken. How could you not believe in God? Seriously, that was his argument.
Jeez. What was yours, caller? And then we'll let you go and grab this last call.
So I have a post on the atheism subreddit right now, and I got people dropping their favorite ones. Basically, one stemmed from a debate I had with a coworker like 10 years ago, to where they brought up a news story about a church burning to the ground, to a crisp. But everybody escaped unharmed, and the Bible was left unscathed. How can you not say God is real? That's literally how they concluded it. Like, how can you not say God is real? And I was like, wait, so Bibles are what, $20? That building's about $150K. Well, I guess God works in mysterious ways. Like,
God's so gracious and all powerful that he allows paper to stay dry, but watches as 3-year-olds get washed away in a flood. Super great God. But thanks so much, Mr. Porter, for calling us. We're glad we got you in there at the end. And again, just a good reminder, there's lots of great places you can go hang out and have these conversations online. What were you thinking, Armin?
No, I was just going to quickly say, by the way, chicken is a bad example, because we humans made chicken out of other birds.
We did.
That's actually, that's one of the worst examples you can get.
It does. It completely goes against everything that
we
person
Frankenstein those suckers together to make them all taste the same.
And let's not even talk about any let's just say widely available quickly served food restaurants or anything, because that'll take us down a liability rabbit hole. Instead, we are going to grab our last caller, which is Kathy, her from Illinois, wants to talk a little bit about attending the Universalist church as an atheist. Kathy, we are close to the end. Give us a quick little succinct thing. You're talking with SR, Armin, and Jim, actually.
Oh, yeah. Great. Thanks for letting me in. I just wanted to make a point, because I've called about this before. I'm an atheist. I started attending the Universalist Unitarian church close to my home. And I wanted to bring up the point that for some people who are either like in between, what do they believe? And especially, it's kind of like a landing zone for them, where they can be surrounded by people, mostly people who would be open to we respect all beliefs. However, it's going to be a way of being skeptical about it. In my experience, like for example, the Unitarian Church is a Unitarian Association had recently a convention called the Parliament of World Religions, and their goal was, their motto for this year, of course, was not conversion, but instead cooperation. And at least at my particular Universalist Unitarian Church, we have the banners of all religions up there, which I don't want that to seem like it's going to scare people. Oh, no, we don't want any religion. It's just so open to information, and it's also a place for people to just kind of land and decompress, especially, if they have children, family, or if they've just experienced a death in the family, rather than go back to their total deep dive. So that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, can I just real quick? Because I don't think necessarily there's anything massively problematic. I could definitely take the stance here with you that, the UU church versus insert pretty much any other denomination or stripe of religion. I can probably stand on that side of being like, yeah, I'm cool with them more so than others. They're doing a better job. But just real
I
quick, because
disagree.
yeah, well, so hang on. So here's where I push back a little, Armin, because I think this might be where you're thinking too. So I just real quick went and looked up something because I thought this was the case. And the Unitarian Universalist Association has 7 principles that come from what's called 6 sources of living. And one of those sources, okay. So one of those sources of living apparently is words and deeds of prophetic people, which challenge us to confront powers and structures of evil with justice, compassion, and the transforming power of love. I have a massive problem with that. I also have another problem with this one that says Jewish and Christian teachings, which call us to respond to God's love by loving our neighbor as ourselves. Because see, again, I don't think the God's real. So I think that source of where they're getting their principles is problematic. And when we look at their principles, they seem to be more in line with something like the Second Manifesto of Secular Humanism, which I would argue has better sources. So I would say that compared to other religions, sure, maybe the UU is at the top. But compared to the best out there, the thing that I think we're all trying to really go for, I think secular human is still obviously the better answer.
Oh, absolutely. But I do agree with you. My point is mainly for just a place for community. And, like I said, in the first place,
we've got community here,
especially if you're calling out to, oh no, I know that. I mean, in your neighborhood. But yeah, okay, I see your point. No, I know that.
Yeah. And
I might
you love your neighbor as your.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well,
you can also add what?
The Unitarian Association, they are working on their principles, which I know exactly which principles they are. I already know about those. One example is in teaching the children, instead of using the word God, we say things like whatever it is that other people believe, what you know of that other people believe. But that's a little bit, you want to say something, Jim?
Yeah, I was going to point out that the love your neighbor as yourself is kind of a nice little thing to think about. But the problem with it is if you don't love yourself enough, then you can't love anybody else. There's a really, really great little, and this is brought home into the great little skit that I saw on TikTok. Hell's Bells, done by See You Later. It's SEA, You Later. She did this really great thing about pointing out that if you don't love yourself first, you can't love anybody else. You're going to do a really, really bad job of interacting with other people, despite your best intentions, because you don't love yourself. And you have to do that first. So that little thing, that love your neighbors as yourself just doesn't ring true for me. It never has. And part of it is because you got to start with yourself. And there's nothing about that, about any of those principles. It starts with take care of yourself first, so that you can take care of other people. And it's all about other people. And I just have a problem with that if you don't start with getting yourself right first. And no religion really talks about that. Yeah, I said no religion really talks about that particular fact.
Yeah, Armin, what are your thoughts?
Groups. Oh, sure. I'm sorry.
Oh no, it's okay.
Armin.
If you wanted to finish, say something. You go ahead, and then I could speak after you finish speaking, Katie. Should I say? Okay.
Well, as part of as part of being a member, there's several groups to be in, and you're learning those kinds of things. Like I came right out and said I'm an atheist, and I based my morality on science or reasoning and empathy. And well, the other good thing about it is simply the fact that I have met a lot of atheists there, and we've had some good laughs about our past education and indoctrination. So that was my other good reason for continuing to be there and go there. For myself, I mean.
Yeah,
Okay, so I have I hope like I don't come off as harsh or anything, Katie, but I am very, very sensitive about these kinds of religions that act like they're better than other religions, but they end up working like a trap. When it comes to having good experiences that you mentioned, everywhere else has that as well. Like people have amazing experiences in Christian churches, in mosques, in synagogues, in Hindu temples, but it's just a package what they come with. That's what we have a problem. Like just because people have good experiences but in mosques, that doesn't mean Islam is a good religion. What comes with it is the problem, because we could have all those good experiences that you're having in that church. We have better alternatives for them, right? And we could do that in a better way. So the trap that I'm talking about is without these churches, these people like that are coming out of religion, if these churches of these other religions, these better versions of religion, so-called better versions of religion, if they weren't there, it would have been better because people would have found better alternatives. It's not like these people, these environments, when there's a demand, there will be a supply. So if there's a demand for such services, it will be provided. And when something comes with the name of a church and a religion and does that, what it's doing is giving legitimacy to methodologies that are flawed. So our problem with religion is not just what it results in; it's the entire methodology that pretends that it could provide answers with ways that we know that we know that are flawed, like faith, like revelation. And when people have problems with Islam and Christianity and Hinduism and Judaism, some people think that they just don't like the results and they go and find alternative religions that is encouraging the same methodology that has led to those results, but the conclusions that they're coming up with, it just feels better. But the problem is that those conclusions that they come up with, that makes them feel it makes that religion is actually more dangerous. Because when I look at the conclusions of Islam and Christianity, I'm like, okay, this is messed up. I don't like this religion. But when some other religion with another brand comes and gives us conclusions that makes us feel good, but it's with the same methodology, that might be even more dangerous, because less people can see that the methodology here is, and also you mentioned that they respect all beliefs, right? That's a problem. Islam doesn't deserve respect. Christianity doesn't deserve respect. Hinduism and Judaism don't deserve respect. So we agree here.
Because I have met people that are Buddhist, or yes, I have met people there that are of that other religion. I think maybe my particular church is an exception. Our biggest thing is inclusiveness and equity, and we do a lot of community. The LGBTQ mostly, and it's not so much a haven for me, but for other people. And I could see where you would be cautious about me saying that we respect all beliefs, because for myself, I have not, and I will not have any.
Just one more sentence, SR, before you talk. See, this is another thing that places like this confuse people, right? Because what we want to be accepting of and tolerant of is people. We want to be accepting of Muslims. We want to be tolerant of Christians, Jews, and Hindus. But they come in, and in the name of tolerance and accepting, they respect and accept people's beliefs. We don't want to accept that. We don't want to be tolerant of bad ideas. We want to be tolerant of people who happen to have bad ideas, but we work to try to eliminate bad ideas, bad beliefs. That's what we do. And when a church comes and with the excuse of being loving and being tolerant and being accepting, promotes the idea of being accepting of bad ideas, that is dangerous. That's a dangerous methodology. We should be against that. Anyways, I spoke enough.
Yeah, and I think a great place for us to kind of wrap up is exactly where Armin was leading to, which is
I do too. I just want
the three of us.
My slogan is my motto.
Yeah. Hang on just a second, Kathy. I'll let you end the whole show out. I promise. Okay. But I think the three of us up here would would all say, it sounds like the experience that you've had is good. And it sounds like that there are, some good positive things for society as a whole that can come from this.
That's right.
But kind of like our poll question in the chat, which is, is there anything good that exclusively comes from this? And I think the three of us would say, no, you can find all of those great things, even better, actually, in secular, non-religious places. And we should support those places instead of going to the Universalist, churches maybe. So, but yeah, I think that's kind of it. We're going to give you the last couple of seconds here, and then we'll get out of here. So.
Yeah. I was going to give you my motto, my slogan.
Yeah. Finish us out with that.
Care for Earth. Okay. Yeah. Be good to self. Care for Earth. Love your fellow human.
I don't have any disagreements there. Yeah. So thank you so much, Kathy.
Okay.
We appreciate you calling. We always love those kinds of good calls. I do think though, what the three of us were expressing, there are some better places. There are some better ways, and definitely better methodologies to get to those good conclusions. So, but guys, we are. Go ahead, please.
Like the Atheist Experience Discord, for
example? That's exactly what I was going to say, because this is maybe the first time on AXP in over 26 years that you've got three beautiful hosts on screen right now, folks, and all three of us are going to be hanging out in the ACA fan run Discord. So if you don't know where to go, it's super duper easy. tiny.cc/ACD Discord, and you can ask your questions and chat it up with me, Jim Barrows, and Armin Navabi. Don't forget, the prompt for this week is great. What should the Norse have had a god of but didn't? So enter your answer in the comments below the video, not in the live chat, and your comment may be read out next week. So tune in at the beginning to see if you are one of those three. And don't forget about the super cool, awesome thing we are doing here at the ACA. You can help support us by making a lasting impression on the ACA and participating in our brick fundraiser. So visit tiny.cc/ACA bricks for more information. If you live in Germany and are not able to access that website, it's just tv@atheist-community.org. Send us an email and we will make sure we take good care of you. Actually, Justin will make sure we take good care of you because he's always the one working hard. So as always, we appreciate everybody here that makes this wonderful, wonderful community what it is. Jim, Armin, it was fun doing it with you both. Yeah. Like we got to just play around a little, and again, the three of us on screen together, we look damn good. So I'm not going to complain about that. And thank you, all of you folks out there watching either now live or in the future listening on the podcast. We greatly, greatly appreciate it. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, like the video if you haven't, and share it out there to people. Get some more people to come hang out with us and maybe, answer some questions about God and religion and stuff. Because 26 years running, we still haven't found a good reason to believe. So don't forget, you can check out the website at atheist-community.org for all the latest of things that's been going on. And again, that email, tv@atheist-community.org. Tell us what you like, what you didn't like. But I don't know. Just come hang out with us in the ACD Discord, folks. We'll all be there. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Watch Talk Heathen live Sundays at 1 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTH and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callth.